Welcome, everybody, to the first session of our Novice Classroom. This is being presented by John Kane, who is a reasonably well-known member of the club and also a racer from way back on Mondello in both single-seaters and in saloons. So he knows Mondello like the back of his hand. And of course, he knows driving around on track. So John, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Glad to be here, glad to be part of this. And I hope that this session has something for everybody. So whether you're new to track days or whether you've had previous experience, I would say I hope that you get something out of this and you thoroughly enjoy our session today. And the first thing I'd say to people is that the image has nothing to do with track days, obviously, but is to relax, because whether you're here with us online or whether you're on track, we're here to have fun. And you need to relax into the experience, has been my finding over the many years of competing in various different forms of motorsport. Just enjoy the experience and go out with the right mindset. And to do that is half the battle at the start, for sure. So if we think about it and we look and see what our PCI track days are about, there's some very good information on the slide there, and you can read that. But what I would say to you is I would pick out 2 points in particular from that, and they are the first and the last point. We will expand on those as we go through the next couple of slides. The overtaking and the safety are particularly important for our own personal safety and for the safety and the well-being of our motor cars. So PCI track days, very different from racing, and we will expand on some of these themes as we go through the next couple of slides, which I hope you'll find very interesting and informative. So first of all, let's look at our paddock procedures because before we go on track, when we have a track day, we have our paddock get together and we see where we're going and what we're doing. And we're all the time trying to improve that. So on our next scheduled track day, which is Thursday of next week, you will have the opportunity to meet your coach in advance, is the theory. And we will probably have that in a room in Mondello, but it will obviously be in Mondello. So watch your PCI email for all of that information coming closer to the day. The safety briefing will happen, it will take place, and it's very important that you should attend that because it gives you some good reminders on the day about some things we will cover and some other aspects that are particular to Mondello Park that maybe the Mondello Park people will cover on the day. For those of you bringing guests, the suggestion and the recommendation strongly is that you would ask those guests to come to the briefing too. In that way, we're all on the same page. So guests won't end up wandering around the paddock or wandering around pit lane, wondering what's going on, and inadvertently get involved in something that they shouldn't be involved in the way of standing where they shouldn't or obstructing something or being a risk for themselves or to moving traffic. So watch out for that. And in terms of traffic, now that I've mentioned it, and we talk about traffic flow around the circuit, there's a picture of the circuit there. And we will endeavor during the initial laps on the 9th to show people where the back exit to the pits is at the Stena line turn there, marked at point number 2 on the map. If you see it, it's the second turn on the circuit, because the other pit entry is further up on the lap. And we would like to show people exactly where that back entry to the pits is. And we'll talk about that some more when we come to flags and so on. So let's talk about some basic track terminology. And for those of you that have some experience, please bear with me on this as we go through for some that aren't or have had very little experience. First of all, the marshals. They are our friends. We like the marshals. And in fairness to them, we can't have a track day without them. So please acknowledge them, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes, because they're very important to our safety and the successful running of the event. Cones are there, and not of the ice cream variety. Cones are there to show people where you are not supposed to go. So if you find yourself driving through some coned entrances, there's an issue. Think twice. You shouldn't be there. They are there for a reason. Cones are there to make sure that we don't go in particular places, and they are part of the safety infrastructure, if you like, of Mondello Park, and we would ask you to respect those. We're going to talk a lot about turn in and apex and exit point and so on around corners and the line through the corner, and obviously straights, which are the bits between the corners. So that's the terminology. On the other side of the page, we'll talk about the braking zone, the passing zone, particularly important. Mentioned it briefly a few minutes ago. And then pit in and pit out on two different understandings. Pit in being the entrance to the pits that I mentioned briefly, but obviously the procedure for when you're coming in, and the same applies to going out because there's a procedure for that. It says very informatively there that there's a longer list on the club website, and indeed there is. There is some excellent supporting material on the club website in the motorsport section if you go there and have a look at that. And I would urge people to do that in addition to what we're talking about this evening. And you will find that very informative, including some videos around driving around Mondello Park with the line and so on and so forth. Very, very good. Well worth a look. If you didn't know it existed, you do now. So no excuse. Quick trip over to the website sometime when you have an hour on your hands and have a look at all of that. So flags and emergency procedures. Mentioned this a few minutes ago when I mentioned marshals. Marshals, as I said, are friends. They are the ones with the flags. The flags are there to tell us what is going on. That is their way of communicating to us what is happening around the track and consequently what we need to be aware of when we're driving. So the green flag is very simple, shown in the start-finish area. If there had been an incident or something is going on, it just means the track is clear, the session is in progress, off you go, drive away. In the event that a marshal sees an issue in the area of the track that they are responsible for, they will show a steady or a waved yellow flag. Now, a steady yellow flag means, as it says on the page, and I don't apologize for reading this one, there's a problem ahead that will require your attention. Slow down and no passing. It's quite simple, really. Those of you that watch motor racing on the telly, I'm sure will know this already, but when it's live and it's in front of you, sometimes brain fade kicks in. So problem ahead requires attention, slow down and no passing. Just remember that. In the event that the flag is waved, consider it that they're getting very excited about something that's going on there. The problem is then, therefore, immediately ahead of you. It's still slow down with no passing, and the advice is to be prepared to drive offline to avoid something. Now, that could be a car stranded, it could be an emergency vehicle, it could be, and is probably more likely to be, a part that has fallen off a car, but it doesn't matter. We don't know what it is until we see it, and we're moving at speed. So we need to slow down, no passing, and be prepared to drive offline. The marshals supply us with this information for our own safety and for the safety of our cars, and we need to respect them and the information they give us. If you don't respect the flags, you can expect to be talking to some of the people from Mondello Park, because they will pull you in, and we'll look at that in terms of how they do that and how they communicate these messages to us in a minute. What's the best way to learn where all the marshal stands are? It says at the bottom of the slide. And honestly, as you go around on your warm-up laps or your familiarization laps, whether you're new to the circuit or whether you're not, make it your business to understand where the marshal's posts are. Give a little wave or a thumbs up from inside the car. You don't need to put your hand outside. From inside the car, and just let them know that you can see them. They'll let you know that they can see you, obviously. So do that and just acknowledge the fact that they're there, and without them, we can't run the event. And we do appreciate the fact that what they do keeps us all safe. Slide number 2, in terms of flags and emergency procedures, the black flag. What you don't want to see is that something is either wrong with you or with your car. So for Mondello, for the track days, a black flag is something wrong with you or the car. You must proceed to the pits and see the marshal at the pit out at the top of the pit lane. The pit out marshal is there controlling the traffic. You will be familiar with the pit out marshal because you won't get access to the track without passing that marshal at some point in time. So that's where you need to go. The red flag is what we hope we don't see. The red flag, as in the motor racing races that you see on telly and so on, the international flag, the international standard is there is a serious incident somewhere on the track. Slow down, no passing, and proceed to the pits. And there's that reference to turn 2 that I made on the Mondello Park diagram earlier on. And as I said, we will try and make sure that we show that to people on the 9th if we get a chance at all. So when I say slow down, that does not mean pile on the brakes and have the fella behind you run into you or whatever. It means slow down in a nice, orderly, proper fashion to a much more manageable speed where you can stop very quickly if you needed to. The no passing rule still applies, but slow down responsibly. The last flags, and I don't need to tell you, I'm sure what they are and what they mean, is the checkered flag. It's over. Your time on track has finished. The track is closing. You proceed around to the pits. No passing, take your cool down lap, reduce your speed, drive responsibly as you would be expected to do, and as anybody else does on a slowing down lap after a checkered flag. And we would ask you to respect that and drive accordingly. There is a map of Mondello. The turn 2 cutout that we mentioned just there is where the yellow arrow is. I mentioned it earlier on as well. So as I said, we will try and get people to show them that on the 9th. It is a nice way into the back of the paddock. It is not a pit entry, but it is a nice way into the back of the paddock, particularly if you have an issue with the car or something. It saves you going all the way around the circuit again to come back in onto the pit entry on the pit in road. So just bear that in mind and keep a record of this map if you need to do that until you become more familiar with the circuit. So now let's talk about some cornering and the basics of cornering. So for the purpose of this session, we are talking about braking and cornering, and we are talking about braking in a straight line. We are looking at what we should be doing, and the big word on the page there is smooth. It's all about being smooth with your inputs. So with your braking, with your throttle, and with your steering, please be nice and smooth with the car and settle the car and drive it accordingly. All the fastest times on racetracks like this are made by and put in by people who are smooth with their input. And I can see Liam smiling there, and I think he probably would agree with that. That's all. We'll explore some of that in some more detail now. But there's a comment there about avoiding coasting. So if you find yourself going around with your foot on the clutch or coasting, or the foot on not having a foot on the throttle, the car is driving you around the corner and you're a passenger. Not ideal and certainly not quick. So you must be giving inputs to the car. You must be telling the car what you want it to do. So don't forget that and keep on top of the car rather than letting the car get on top of you. So first of all, before we corner, we have to brake. So the braking zone obviously is the part of the track where we brake before we get into the corner. So complete all of that in a straight line, as I said earlier on. I absolutely accept, and for those of you that know, that there is a different way of braking, which is not in a straight line and into the corner. But for the purposes of this exercise and for this session, and for where we are starting with this for people in terms of getting them into lines in corners and so on, we are braking in a straight line to a point, and then we are turning in. That also means that you've got to finish any gear changing that you're doing as you're braking before you start turning in. There is no point in turning in and trying to booster for a gear somewhere in there. There's one in there in the box somewhere, we know that, but a little bit too late and the car is unsettled, etc. So change down, get all the gear changing done before you enter the corner and as part of the braking process. So let's look at a corner. Now, the ideal line in the corner is laid out in green. The mathematicians among us would probably tell you that the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line, but obviously we can't go around the corner in a straight line, so we've got to try and straighten it out as much as we can. And there's a reflection of what a green line, the ideal line through a corner looks like. From your turn-in point, which is very helpfully labeled, to your apex, where you're just kissing the inside of the corner, and to your exit point. And the smoother and the more consistent you can make that line through the corner, the faster you will go through that corner. It's all a matter, of course, about where your turn in is, where you hit your apex, where you take your apex and your exit point. And we'll see that now in the next example, because we have left, excuse me, the green line there. And we have looked at what happens if you turn in a little bit too early in the red line that has been superimposed over the green one there. You can see straight away that you turn in a little bit too quick. You see what I say about the straight line. You can see a straight-ish line, but you're absolutely not getting out of the corner. You're going to run off the circuit altogether. So if you turn in too early, this is what happens, and you will find yourself driving off the track or running out of road as you exit. If that's the case, the likelihood is you didn't get it wrong in the middle of the corner. You got it wrong at the start, and you've got to look at your turn-in point. I'm sure you can see the theory given the lovely colored helpful lines that are on the page. A late apex is pretty much the opposite. You turn in very late. You're obviously going a lot slower because you're going to turn a lot harder. You're going to scrub off a whole lot more speed, and you're not using all the road coming out. Not a very efficient way of doing it. And you can see exactly how that relates to the ideal line, which is laid out in green on the page. I would have to say to you that if you get it wrong, you will definitely know at the exit. And the error, as I said a minute ago, is more likely to have been at the braking or the turning in point than it is anywhere else. Of course, not every corner on the circuit is a single corner like I have just outlined on the slide there. There are all types of corners, which of course makes it all the more interesting and all the more challenging and all the more exciting and all the more fulfilling when you get it right and frustrating when you get it wrong. So that is the joy of it. And that's what you got to relax into, which is what I mentioned earlier on. So all of those types of corners are there. Don't have the time to go through every single one of them. You can see a line through there, through the corners, and they all are a challenge in their own right. If I was to have a tip for anybody, it would be, and you don't see this now so much, but you used to see it years and years ago. I would say, go and have a look at the circuit in reverse. Have a look at a corner. Have a look at your exit from the corner. Stand at the exit of the corner and have a look through the corner and see where your apex is and see where you should be turning into that. And look at the corner in reverse. Saw lots and lots and lots of racing drivers doing this years ago, particularly the guys that came from abroad with the EFTA Racing Series for Formula 4 2000 and Opel Lotus and all those sorts of things. And they would always go out on their bikes, first day out in the circuit, and have a look at the corners in reverse and understand where they know where they need to be. It's how do I get there? And they plan the corner in reverse. And it means they go out on a strange circuit and they learn lines really, really, really quickly. So try it sometime, and you might find it interesting. And that's just a tip. So there you go. Happy to talk about that later on when we get to that stage, if anybody wants to pick it up. So passing. Now, this is really important. And this is really important because the way this is structured, it is essentially a contract between the drivers. This is what keeps us safe and keeps our cars straight and panels not damaged on the day. Track days can be notorious for doing damage. Porsche track days are absolutely not that. They are anything but. They are absolutely designed to expect drivers to behave in a way and to expect on-track behavior. That means we all go home with the cars as intact, body panel wise anyway, not necessarily engine and gearbox, as we laid out to go. So the idea here is that the car being overtaken, the slower of the two cars, controls the pass. That car can see that there's a car closing quickly, looks in their mirrors, understands where they are, sees a straight piece of tarmac between corners, pulls to the right and puts on their right-hand indicator to give an indication to the car that's closing, the faster car. I see you, it is safe to go by, I have moved offline, you stay online, pass me out. And that's great, and that works really well. The marshals in Mondello have been asked to watch out and understand if that's not being followed, either by cars that are being overtaken or cars that are overtaking because they are overtaking where they shouldn't. Because if you find yourself being passed in the middle of a bend, something is wrong, and that should not happen. So for everybody's sake and for the car's sake, we have this set of rules and regulations around how we overtake and how we behave on circuit towards each other. And it's not door-to-door contact or anything like it. So that's the contract between the drivers. So, as I said, the car that's overtaking has to wait until they see that the car that is being overtaken acknowledges them by pulling to the right, offline, and putting on their right-hand indicator so that we now know we can go. And if there's 2 or 3 cars coming, the indicator has to give to each one, and so on. Now, Mondello is not blessed with an awful lot of straights. And sometimes what counts as a straight in Mondello Park, particularly if we're moving reasonably quickly, is only a couple of seconds in a short bit of tarmac. So this is where we all have to use the head and the mirrors and the bit of calculation. You may have to scrub off a bit of speed. There is no point in you moving over and keeping at your speed and putting on your indicator if you're not going to give the poor chap who's trying to pass you out the opportunity to do so safely. So be aware of your speed, come offline, come off the throttle, maybe even a slight brake if you need to. Give the individual the space. Be aware of what's going on around you. And if you do that and everybody returns the courtesy and the favor, everything will work out very well. And to date, thanks be to God, everything has worked out very well and we haven't had any issues. So similarly, if you're the faster car and you come across a slower car and you are on a cool down, or you've decided you're going into the pits or whatever the case may be, and you decide you don't want to overtake, and some car has seen you coming quicker and decides to move in to let you by, but you don't want to do that, move in behind them and tell them, it's okay, I'm here, I'm fine, work away, etc. Acknowledge what they have done and let them on with what they're doing. Don't sit behind them and do nothing at all, because it just makes people wonder. They're saying, I'm following the rules, I've moved in here, he's not overtaking me, why not? So that's the situation. I think I've probably covered everything on the page there, but if I haven't, we can pick it up in the session and the questions at the end. I'm happy to do that. But this is really important stuff. Now, we are lucky in that we have coaches and track leaders who will take you in their car and show you lines and go in your car and talk to you. How you decide to communicate with each other is entirely between yourselves and themselves. Various different suggestions there. I find that with all of the helmets and everything else that's going on, and maybe as I get a bit older and the hearing goes astray, I'm more inclined to shout or point. It doesn't mean to say you frighten me, but nonetheless, we'll talk about that in a minute. The fact is, sort it out with the coach how you're going to communicate. It's great going around to get the most out of the trip. Make sure that you understand what the coach is going to tell you, and the coach knows how he's going to communicate, or she, to you, what you need to understand or hear. So that's all I would say on that. Driving position. Now, some of us that bring cars to track days have harnesses, which is fine. The rest of us are working on seat belts. So we have to do a little bit more work on this one. Really what we need to do is think about 2 items in particular that are really important when you have the seatbelt on. And that's, make sure you press your back into the seat and use the dead pedal, which is the bit obviously beside the clutch, to make sure you lever yourself in. So when you get this car set up and you're accelerating through the corner and you're going to be pulling a couple of G, etc., you know yourself, make sure you're well into that seat and you're not moving. You don't want to be moving around in the car, because when you're moving around in the car, so is the steering wheel, and we don't want to do that. So there is a list of what you need to be looking at. If you're not sure, ask your coach before you go out. We'll open the door, you sit in the car, and we'll suggest how you should adjust the car to make sure that you're comfortable and you're safe driving the car, because it's not like when you're driving the road car and so on. It's just a little bit different because of the speeds and the cornering that's involved. So happy to help again there. It's another aspect of the event that the coaches can really help you with. So skid and spin control. Look, we talked about smooth inputs before for steering, throttle and braking. It's mentioned 3 times in the first part of this. It's not there by accident. It's just really, really, really important. Be aware of the conditions around you on the track and the indications that are there. The conditions that are there are all around. If it's a dry day and you see something on the track, it's either oil or water. Either one is going to make things a bit slippy if you drive on it and it's big enough. And if it's oil, it's going to be particularly so. The marbles, not too much of an issue in Mondello, really, given what goes on there. But for marbles, I'm not going to talk about just rubber. I'm going to talk about all sorts of track debris. If you're offline, you're not going to have the same level of grip as if you're online. So we're back to the lines we were talking about earlier on. Bear that in mind, okay? For those that are new to it, if you ever get a chance to get out on the circuit and have a look, and you look offline near the grass, on the tarmac near the grass, you will see what I'm talking about. It's all the small bits of debris that come off tires and the road and tarmac and stones and so on. It's not very grippy, shall we say. So that's what I would say there in terms of preventing a spin. However, if you do manage to lose it, and it happens, 2 feet in is what they say, keep the steering wheel rigid. There is no point in trying to fight it, and you're being thrown around anyway as the car goes. So keep the steering wheel rigid. When you come to a stop, find a marshal, look for a friend, and give them a signal and let them know, yeah, car is still running, etc. You're looking around. You might be on the grass, you might be on the tarmac. The marshal will tell you whether to stay where you are or whether to rejoin the circuit, because they're up on the bank. They can see what's coming. You can't. So find a marshal, find a friend, understand what's happened. And when you get going again, and hopefully you do, and they don't need to stop the session and send out tow truck and all the rest, because the slag going to be immense, not to worry. Hit in and talk it over with somebody. Get going again, come into the pits, talk it over, understand what happened, check that everything's all right, check that nothing's damaged, understand what happened to make the spin if you do. And if you don't, well, maybe you need to make sure that something didn't break or something's not gone loose or whatever. So, or you haven't got a puncture maybe, and so on. So have a look at all of that, consider all of that. Really, really important that you do that. On-track etiquette, a bit of a summary slide, if you like, in some respects, I suppose. Watch your mirrors. Know where you are on the track. Know who's around you. Know what's happening. Basic enough stuff. Easier on some corners than others. If you're coming into a hairpin, you can see who's gone out of it. When you're coming out of it and you look to your right, particularly on turn 3 there, you'll see who's coming in behind you. So you know where you are. Pay attention to your mirrors and let other people pass. Know what's going on the track around you. Pay attention to the flags. Acknowledge the flag marshals. Said it before, they are your friend. And be patient. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with the process. Be patient with the procedures. We're not used to driving these cars fast, the vast majority of us, for a long period of time. The most you will get out of it, giving good effort to it, is 3 to 5 laps. And after that, you may come in, because if you stay out any longer, you will be too tired to drive it really fast if it comes to it. So be patient with yourself, be patient with the circuit, be patient with overtaking if that's what you're doing, and be patient if others are overtaking you, and then enjoy it and relax into it. Don't follow too closely for obvious reasons, and mind the closing speed. Spoke about that before. And to those that are the slower car in the equation, I say again, watch your speed, lift a little bit, or even as it says there, brush the brakes as the car passes you, to give the car that's passing out the space it needs to go around you and to take the line and to work away through the next corner. Mondello, as I said, not blessed with lots of straights, and we don't want to be just passing in 2 places really on the circuit. We want to be able to pass and let everybody have their enjoyment in more than just 1 or 2 places. Now, finally, probably the most important 2 points of all on the page, as far as I'm concerned. Your coach is a volunteer. Myself and my colleagues that are the track leaders on the day, we are volunteers. In the car, if we're trying to coach you to do something and it's all going horribly wrong, we are likely to overrule what I am saying here tonight or whatever you think you're doing, because we are uncomfortable. And we would ask you to respect that and back off and do whatever we're asking you to do. So in car, the coach overrules the classroom. If you're on your own, what you do is your own business. But when we're in the car with you, we would ask you to respect what we have to say to you and to listen to what we have to say to you and to respond accordingly. And that's our only ask for the time and the effort and the volunteerism that we give in doing this, because we really enjoy what we do. And it's great to see people getting encouragement and enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment out of their day on the track and those laps and those individual corners when they get them right. It's really, really good. So lastly, know and feel your car. Be aware of the changes that are taking place. You have temperatures, you have sounds in the car, you have how the car feels when you're driving it. Be aware of all of these things. Know your limits, and if you're at all in doubt, into the pit, follow the pit in process and check it out. Have somebody else look at it. Talk to somebody and tell them it feels entirely different through turn 3 and the whole back is coming out on me, or whatever the case may be. Why is that? Have I got a slow puncture? Am I checking my tire pressures? What's happening? Why is it behaving differently? There's a sound there, there's a noise there, there's a knocking that wasn't there before. With any car, you might want to retire, because if you keep driving it, you're going to do more damage. And what might be easily fixed now could turn into something more expensive. So listen for the sounds, watch your temperatures, feel how the car is, and understand and know your limits. And as I say, when in doubt, pit in and check it out. That's the last slide that we have in this section and in this Classroom 1 discussion, or Classroom 1 presentation. We'll now open it. I'll ask Chris to open it to people who are attending for any questions that we might have. And we will keep you informed of when Classroom 2 is available, and we would hope to have that for you before too long. I hope you've all got something out of this evening, and I invite you now to a discussion, and we'll open that up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate that. That was a wonderfully concise and frankly, for how concise it was, comprehensive discussion of what people need to know the first time they get on track. For those of you who joined late, this video presentation after the Q&A is concluded will be posted to the Motorsport page on the club website, along with the slides and the video itself. And together with a track map. And John, if you could do me the favor of rolling back to, I think it's page 8, which is the big picture of the track map. This map will post as well. It shows the cutout, which is very important. If you get black flag, the only place Mondello will show a black flag is at start finish, the checker box at the bottom of the page there. And that's very long. It's quite a long way. It's an entire lap away. So almost 3 kilometers away from where the normal pit in, which is up here. I think if you can see this, that's the normal pit in. So what Mondello would like you to do, if you are black flagged because there's something that is mechanically questionable about your car or about your driving, then you're going to see the black flag right here. They would like you to go around turn 1, and instead of going all the way around the circuit again, they'd like you to take the shortcut into the back of the paddock and then come through here to pit out, which is about at this spot, roughly. Remember, in this area generally. So that's an important Mondello only procedure. And the other thing about this, this map, which you should know, is that there are a number of stars we have added to it. Those stars indicate the marshal stands that are actually staffed on a track day. There are lots more marshal stands which are not on this map. We don't want to confuse you, but these are the ones that for our track day, Mondello will have a marshal sitting in those stands with a yellow flag and a red flag. Those are the only 2 flags you'll see a marshal stand on a track day. And as John said several times, as you take your cool down lap, your entire cool down lap around the circuit, it's a really good idea to acknowledge those flaggers, either if they're, just give them a wave as you're going around, as you're driving the perfect line back into the pits. And if they actually have shown you a flag, to acknowledge it so that, if there's a red flag particularly, that you acknowledge that, yes, I've seen the red flag and I am doing the right thing. I am not keep my eyes focused on the road and ignoring you. Just a couple additional amplifications of points that John has already made. So now we'd like to turn to questions and answers. And you are welcome to unmute yourself. You all join muted and raise whatever questions you have for us, for John in particular, and others of the coaches who or track leaders who may be with us. So don't be shy.
Thanks very much, John. Great presentation.
You're welcome, PJ. Good to hear from you. Have you any questions? Or do you keep them for next Thursday?
Probably keep them for next Thursday. No, it's quite comprehensive what you've gone through there, and yeah, it's fine.
Good. Thank you, PJ.
You're welcome, John. Everybody's gone quiet.
May I say that I think that what John has done and what Chris and what everybody has done with bringing forward the track days and this type of thing is a fantastic move that was really required. And I think what you're doing this year deserves a full round of applause and thank you. You're looking after a lot of things that were not sorted out before.
Well done. Well said, Tony.
Here.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I'll add my agreement to that, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks so much.
Good. Glad people are enjoying it. It makes it all the better. And in fairness, Augusto couldn't join us this evening. I'm not sure if he has, but if he's on the call, I'll say anyway. Augusto has put a huge amount of work into this, and fair play to Augusto. So thank you, Augusto.
Here.
We appreciate the compliments and the comments, but surely there must be some substantive questions that we should address so that that we can wax on about that.
Sure. Well, for me, I missed the beginning, so apologies. And you talk about turning in. I'd love to see more of that, but I think I just watched the recording. So it's probably best because everybody else has seen that already, I think.
Okay, unless you have any specific question, Wolfgang, I'm happy to revisit it. I mean, that's what this is about. It's about clarity. So if you have any question, I'm happy to revisit the slide if you want me to do that.
If you don't mind, yeah, I guess it's you showed the right way to turn in and the wrong way to turn in. And I guess when you're on the wrong way and you kind of know, like, how do you fix it and how do you avoid it in the first place?
Okay. I'd say depends on the corner, obviously, but very hard to fix it without obviously costing yourself time. And that's why I say when you understand where you are at the exit point, if you're wrong at the exit point, it's probably because you got it wrong much further back. Very difficult to fix it. There is no. Liam might nod his approval or not, but I think you won't fix it. You will just lose time. And I think the next time around, what you got to do is try something different. You will know if it's not working out for you because the car is just not behaving underneath you. You'll feel that it's not right. The car is unsettled where it shouldn't be, or you're trying to put the power down and all you're doing is understeering off the circuit or something. So you'll know yourself when it's not right. And if that's the case, change your turn-in point. Or if you feel that your line is pretty good and it's still not right, are you trying to go too fast through the corner? You need to be slower in and faster out. Or indeed vice versa. If you find yourself a bit pedestrian coming out of the corner, is it because you're too slow through the corner? So these are the things you got to think about, but quick enough to sit in and diagnose that with somebody. So I think if you start asking yourself those questions, you'll understand a little bit more about where it's going wrong. So that's all. Is that any help to you?
Yeah, thank you, John. That's helpful. Thanks.
Okay.
And as John said, every turn is different. So it's an iterative process. The safe thing to do is to turn in later than you need. Make it a late apex, even though that is not necessarily the geometric right thing to do, and then to move it back towards a little earlier and earlier until you find out kind of where your skills are going to take you, where your car is going to take you, where the turn is going to take you, and you work at it that way. So a late apex is always the safer approach, right? Because you have extra track at the exit point. It's much more comfortable than a too early apex, where you find yourself having to compromise your speed, and because your exit point lies, frankly, off the racing surface off the track surface. So that's not too comfortable, and which can cause you, which I've seen at Mondello a reasonable number of times, people trying to fix it by adding more steering input, and that doesn't really work. And what I call pinching the turn, you're pinching the exit, and as a consequence, that is pushing you towards a spin situation. So that's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
for the person in your passenger seat.
What I've done there, Chris, just in support of what you're saying, is put up that diagram there for Wolfgang, and you see the late apex there, and you can see where the red line is. You're absolutely not using the whole of the road. You're not drifting out towards the outside of the circuit and using a lot of the road until you're way, way, way past the corner. And you are, back to the point I made about the two straight lines before being the shortest distance, you are literally trying to, from a very late turn in there, nearly take a straight line past an apex to get out of the corner. And of course, it just doesn't work. The dynamics just make sure that it just doesn't work for you. So I hope that illustrates the point as well that Chris was trying to make, because you can see the difference. If you look at the green exit point and you look at where the red line is on the late apex line through the corner, you can see you have a whole lot of road there that you're not using. And of course, we are talking here about just being able to drive the line through the corner on your own and not in a racing scenario. In a racing scenario, of course, all this goes out the window, but that's not what we're talking about. So there you go.
Yeah, we're not defending our turns on track, because we've got the contract with the cars behind us that they're not going to pass us in the they're going to dive bomb into this turn if we set up and do our turn in where it indicates. Can we jump back to page 8 for just another moment, because there's one turn in particular there that I'm relatively new to Mondello. This is the first year I've done track, but turn 5 there, I guess it used to be called Lola, maybe it still is. That turn, I've been told, is a very late apex, that people go in very deep into that turn. Or maybe I'm thinking of turn 3. Maybe it's turn 3 I'm thinking of. As I say, I'm not that familiar with Mondello. But turn 3, I think people go in very deep and sort of straighten out the exit and treat this first part of turn 3 as almost an extension of the straight. So they're really turning in way, way back here and making that, they're compromising their entry speed and then getting a longer acceleration out here. So they're sort of squaring the turn off, I suppose you might call it. Is that right, John?
Yeah, there are lots of different ways to go through there, but when you're not defending anything, the big problem with turn 3 is if you're going into it and you're defending, the first part of turn 3, just past where the star is, becomes critical, because if you're going to take a really fast line through there, you really want to turn, you want to be on the left hand side of the circuit, and you want to cut back across that just after the star there. Now, we're trying to defend that in a racing scenario. You can't do that because somebody's going to come up the inside of you. So the bottom line is, for us, and we'll talk about what we're doing, you come down into that, into that, and you will come across, and you will apex there on that first part of the bend and try to lengthen the straight, so to speak. And when you do that, you will aim at two pieces that you'll see that there are two pieces of tarmac there, an old and a new, an older one and a newer one, where they join. And it's in that area there, depending then on how your car is geared, it's either second or third gear up the hill from there. And you are then tight apex, then you're gone in very late, and you're apex up the hill and using all of the road to get out of it and go up the hill.
That's right. The turn in there is that line, sort of a horizontal line on the track
Yeah.
where it divides where the pavement was done differently. And that's the
That's right.
turn-in point all the way out at the far left edge of the track.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very well shown in the video that's on the Motorsport website. Our Motorsport page is on our PCI website. The video that's there calls that out really clearly. And indeed, I think it nominates some trees that are still there and still growing that you can aim at. I always worry about natural reference points like that, because they grow and they change or they disappear over time, but not these ones. The trees are still there that are referenced in the video, so they're still a good marker. You mentioned turn 5, Chris, and I love turn 5 because you go down into that and you go well down into it. If you get the lock right on the car through turn 5, it is a constant flow on the lock on the car. You're not moving the steering wheel at all. It's a set lock through the whole corner. You don't need to go all the way out on the road. You don't need to use all of the road, and you can power on through that corner and all the way down, heading down towards Daly Street and out again in the middle of the road, so that you can take that left there at turn 6. And again, you don't need to be way out on the right hand side of the road there. So you don't have to go all the way out to the outside coming out of 5, and you don't have to go all the way over to 6, because in so doing, you're saving yourself not transversing all that road, and you're saving yourself time, which is what this is all about. So that's turn 5.
Thank you. I mean, to underscore, the video that John's referring to is on the Motorsport page website. It's Aidan Farrow driving, I think, 2 or 3 laps of the perfect school line, the line where you're not defending your turns from against a racer behind you. And it was done purposefully for this series of classes we're doing in this round of track days. And Aidan narrates it. So a good bit of homework is to put this track map up on your screen or on a printout and watch that video and doing start stop to see what he is doing at each of these turns, where he's positioning the car at the 3 cardinal points, right? Turn in, apex, and exit point. And just trying to get that visual image. It's not as good as being in the car on the day, but it's great preparation.
Pat has a hand up there.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can indeed. Yes, Pat.
You mentioned about gear change, and I know each car is obviously different, but you know, what gear should you be in? I mean, is it just second and third most of the time, or what?
Well, it really is very different, and I'm not trying to avoid the question. I drive my own car is a Cayman, but I have a 6-speed box in the Cayman, and the 6-speed box doesn't give me an extra long gear for economy motorway driving. My 6th is the same as 5th, same ratio as 5th in the 5-speed Caymans. So I have a closer ratio gearbox. So it can be different for me in some of the corners. Turn 3 that Chris was talking about a minute ago is a toss-up between second and third for me. But I understand that it is third in a lot of the Caymans. I don't know, because I haven't driven any of the rest of them. It really does depend on how hard you want to drive the car and how much revs you want to put into it. And then it depends too on where your power band is, because there's no point in revving the hell out of the yoke if you're out of the power band. If the power band has it enough to change and to use a higher gear to get up and keeps you in the torque range, that's where you need to be. So these are the things you'll find out as you get into them and as you try them. But trying them yourself is the only way. And talk to others who are driving the same car as you. I don't know what car you have, but talk to others that are driving the same car as you, that might be of the same model, vintage and so on, and ask them, you know, about their gearboxes and what they're doing. And that's all I could suggest to you. And I'm not trying to avoid the question.
Well, what I would add to that, which I think is exactly what John says, exactly right, is that as you get more familiar with the track and your pace picks up a bit and your skills pick up a little bit, everything changes. And when the first of those turns changes, that changes the next turn, because Mondello has a number of compound turns, a number of linked bends, and that's what makes the sport so tremendously satisfying and exciting, is that you build that mastery, and as you get quicker, everything changes and you adjust to that, and then that causes further changes, and it rolls. So it'd be very hard, I think, to get bored of Mondello as that particular track, or frankly, any track, because as you get better, it all changes. Conditions change, the cars around you change. It's a wonderful sport.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
May I suggest just something that I kind of listening there, what we're all saying, everything is about learning, and that's what life is about learning. And every time you go out, you know, you learn something, and it's kind of R&D. With some of the new people who are going out, or even some of the existing people who have been on the track before, it is good if they go out with somebody else who's an expert like John or Chris or something. Go out, watch and listen what they're doing and learn from them. Then do some laps themselves. But on completion, ask either John or Chris or somebody to go back with them again and see if you've learned something. In other words, have you learned something from it? And like, that's good satisfaction. Like, that's the carrot, you know, that is going to make you go again and say, well, I learned something. Next time I'm going to do more.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. And certainly the feedback we've had from, and I'm not just talking about myself here, I'm talking about my colleagues as well who do the same thing. The feedback we are getting is that when we show people a line, or whether it's in our car or whether we go with them, now that we could the last day, we couldn't the first track day this year, obviously, but they do feel that it makes a difference. And they do feel that they're getting more satisfaction out of it, and they're driving quicker through it. And then they come back and I find they're trying to clarify points down to a finer degree, or maybe they've got, I always suggest that they work on maybe one or two corners first, the one or two that they feel they're not so comfortable in, or that and when I say not so comfortable, I mean how they feel in the car and how the car feels. Is the car comfortable or is it not? Is it sitting right on the road or is it not? And we address the one or two that are causing them the problem, and they seem to get that much better, and they come back then and they're fine tuning some of the rest of the corners. So I think what you're saying is absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay, we have just about used our allotted hour. I don't want to cut this short, but are there other questions people want to raise? Just unmute yourself and jump right in. I'll be quiet for a bit.
Chris, it's Liam. I was just going to ask you, did you say that you were going to have cones at the turn-in, apex, and exit? Was that something that?
I think probably not at Mondello for this next track day. They don't typically put them out for track days because I'm afraid they think that they spend a lot of time picking up again after they're knocked off. They're not supposed to hit the cones, but I think at other track days they do. That's something that we're looking forward to doing next year, I think, at their next track days. Ideally, we put them out at the outset, have people, sort of position themselves on track, and then remove them when we have a break, because you don't want to end up driving cone to cone. It's a bit of a crutch, which can be really hold you back. The cones that we will have on track will be those here at turn 2, around the cutout, and other places where the other circuits intersect with the international circuit that we're going to be on, helping people stay on the right bit of tarmac and not the wrong bit of tarmac. So that's not a completely satisfactory answer, I'm sure, to your question. And we'd like to, as part of our tuition process, to have some cones helping people learn some of the turns. There are a lot of turns here, but we can't expect that on Thursday next.
One of the challenges I see with the cones too, for that purpose, is that, I mean, I have a Cayman, as I said, I have a 944. I would really not like to be breaking the 944 at the same point I was breaking the Cayman, because it's entirely different. I'll be off if I wait in the 944 to break where the Cayman breaks. Although the 944 won't be going as quick, it just will not stop as quick for sure either. So again, and again, I'm trying to avoid the question, but again, it's down to the car, and it's that little bit of learning. And there are points that you can pick up, and you will do that with the coaches in terms of where the grass starts, or where the barrier starts, or where the sign is, or there are plenty of points on the circuit. There are some white lines that we can pick up, and that I have found that we can pick up with fellow members in the cars as we're starting to set out those points, to make sure that we're giving people some sort of an indication as to where they should be and give them a good start.
Can I ask a question? It may have been covered earlier on. I wasn't able to join until 8 o'clock. But in terms of the coaches, I haven't done any of the earlier track days this year. Is there like one for everybody in the audience, or how does that work? Is there 2 or 3 people, or how are they allocated?
I take that, John?
Okay, so is that Sean?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Sean. I recognize the voice.
Hi,
Good to talk to you. Glad to see you tonight. Yeah, look, I think I missed part of the first part of the question, but I think what you're saying is the coaching available to everybody, and how does it work on the day and so on? And it absolutely is, and it works that, generally speaking, we have some familiarization laps behind a course car first. The intention for next Thursday is that we will introduce anybody who has asked for coaching and leading to their coaches and leaders before the session starts, so you know where we are and what we're doing, and then you could follow us for a couple of laps, and then we are happy then for students to get into our cars and show them. It's a personal preference thing, obviously, for all of the track leaders, to show you where we break and where the line is. And then equally happy, I think, most of us to sit into your own car and talk you through those lines as well once we've shown you, or any combination of that. And then you can have us for a little while and then wander off and take a rest, and then go and do some laps yourself and figure it out and see how you got on, and then come back and say, hey, listen, I'm doing okay in 2 and 3, but 5 is a disaster and I'm lost in 7. So let's go through this again, and we can do all that again too. So that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that, John.
Yeah, we have about 5 or 6 people signed up to wear the high-vis PCI vest, and our plan, people who have registered have said, do you want someone to work with you? And if they said yes, you'll be assigned to somebody, and we'll know that in advance and get you together in the paddock or in the classroom beforehand. So you know you're working with.
Thank you for that.
It won't be one-on-one because we're not to that point yet. It'd be nice to be a one-on-one, but we'll cover everybody. Okay. Any further questions? And it's if not, we want to thank you all for attending, and look forward to seeing you on Thursday next.
Thank you all. Hope to see you next Thursday. I hope you all enjoy the day and have a good evening. All the best. Bye now.
Great.
Thanks, lads. Thanks, lads.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Well
Thank you.
done.
Good night, everybody.
Well done.